Hi, I'm Aileen Mogis. I'm a coach, facilitator, and public speaker.
And I'm Daphne Kasambala, former banker, entrepreneur, and mentor.
We're longtime friends and African women in the diaspora, talking to women like us about the things that matter to us.
And this is Soulfully Podcast. So, Aileen, here we are.
Yeah,
it's the penultimate episode of Series 1 of Soulfully Podcast. I thought that we could take a look at some of our recordings. I know that we have one more episode coming up and it's going to be a banger. It's amazing. But just looking back over some of the guests that we've had in our first episode, whom I'd love to thank anyway, because they took a leap of faith with us. They literally came in on the promise of just our enthusiasm on the potential that we presented them, and they were ready to sort of roll up their sleeves and get involved. And one of the things I've loved the most is hearing back from our early adopters, our early listeners, hearing their feedback on each one of our episodes. That's been utterly amazing. It's been validating, and it's been uplifting to know that, you know, one of our objectives was to have conversations that felt like you're sitting around the dinner table. And a lot of people, unsolicited, have come and said that to us. They've said it felt like I was eavesdropping on a conversation, a nice, easygoing conversation around supper, and that's been fascinating. And I'm saying it once now, I'll say it again. Please keep that feedback coming. And if you do know anybody who you think would be a wonderful guest for us to interview, let us know. But especially tell people that you know would enjoy listening to our voices and listening to the experiences that we share on the podcast. Please spread the word and be our ambassadors.
Just the thing that gets me is in every episode where we've spoken to people, we've had a guest. What's amazed me is the breadth of their stories. We know so little about each other, don't we? Even if we think we know each other, when we sit down and really listen to people's stories, they're just all incredible. It's just beautiful how the women we've spoken to are navigating the world and bringing their gifts and their strengths and their humanity to this world, and how that uplifts. If we can look at each other in that way instead of looking at each other in judgment, if we can look at each other with curiosity and interest and value, it's amazing what we can learn. It's amazing how we can grow. It's amazing how we can champion and cheer for each other.
And what about the fact that there's so much that we share in terms of our experiences? Our experiences might not be exactly the same, but each and every one of our guests gave us a story about rising up from adversity, having challenges, some of which I think we assume that we're the only ones having, and yet seeing how each one in their own way was able to use the experiences, use the challenges and the difficulties, and turn them around into a positive experience for others.
And I think it's amazing. It's that whole thing of beauty for ashes, isn't it? Sometimes we look and we see our situation, we see something that's so terrible, and we think, well, this is terrible. It will never be any good. This part of my story will always be bad. This part of my story will always be negative. This part of my story is going to cast a lens over the rest of my life. And sometimes we can live at that point, right? We stay there at the point of saying, I've failed in something, or I am not good enough, or I have whatever, and we stay at that point. But I think what the guests all showed is like the choice to not stay at that point and to say, actually, I am going to take this situation and turn it into something good. And that's a real decision point, isn't it?
It is.
I think it was, I think the story which is still to come about the crossroads and literal crossroads, where we reach crossroads in our life and we're like, well, which way are we going to go? Are we going to follow the voice of you're not good enough, you can't do this, you should,
Mm.
you should back down, just, um, stay in your
Stay
lane,
put.
stay put, stay in your lane, calm down? Or are we going to say, you know what? I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to turn it into something positive. I'm going to harness everything I've learned from this and I'm going to create and I'm going to give it away in whichever way that looks like, you know?
And it looks like many different things. It looks like so many
Exactly.
different things, and there's so many different talents. I mean, who would have when you chart the journeys of our guests, you look at people who started
Mm,
out studying biology or chemistry and ending up being hair activists, and people who studied
yeah,
international development
yeah.
ending up being in IT, and various, just that it's like all of us, each and every one of us without exception, has has meandered to where we are now.
Yeah.
And that's been refreshing, because and none of us are done yet. We're not done yet.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I mean, I have an intention of living a very long life. And I think for me, my late 30s, 40s have been the best bits, right? Nobody, people say that, but it really, there's a freedom. And I just imagine the older I get, the more I will know
Mm,
how to be in this world
hmm.
in a way that is authentic to who I am,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't want to sort of say, all right, I've got 10 more years to crack this thing, and then I'm going to lie down. You know what I mean?
And
It's like
retire.
I'm going to lie down. It's done. It's over. No, it's
Yeah.
like what an adventure. We've got the rest of our lives to just perfect being ourselves,
Yeah.
not to be perfect, but just perfect being ourselves.
Oh, wow, I like that. Perfect being ourselves. I'm going to ruminate on that. I also find that I'll go away and have a think about that. Lovely thing about growing older as well is getting wiser. And I know it's such a cliche to say you get wiser. The other day I was just on my own, in my own mind, in my own thoughts. And I was like, what is wisdom? Because I'm like, I know I'm wiser, definitely. What is wisdom? And I found that for me, my definition of wisdom is no, having confidence in your gut feeling, or having confidence
Mm,
in your predictions. Because for the longest time, I would think that something would happen, or I would think that this would be the likely outcome of a situation. And then time would pass, and the my predictions were correct. And then I started
right.
thinking, hold on a minute, I'm getting really, really good at this. And I realized that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is knowing better. It's literally just knowing better and having the confidence in your knowledge, having the confidence in the experience to be able to advise yourself, advise others, or even just take
Mm,
actions based on what you already know. It's lovely.
yeah. And I think the thing with that is that there's like an alignment, right? Because wisdom, knowledge in and of itself, I know a lot of very intelligent fools, to be honest. You can be really intelligent and really well educated and not be wise,
Yeah.
because just having information and knowledge does not make us wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's to understand how to best use that knowledge and information in the world, which I think comes a lot of the time from experience.
Mm-hmm.
um, Although I have met some incredibly wise young people, it's like
Mm-hmm.
looking at how does this knowledge actually play out? What are the ripple effects? What are the long term consequences? Not just in one area. I think when we look at things with wisdom, we look at things holistically. We look at things in completion. We look at things to benefit more than just a single agenda. We look at things with a broad sense of compassion, generosity, and understanding
Wow.
and knowledge, right? So we have to actually understand. And I think a lot of the time, we enter into situations, that saying, where angels fear to tread. We rush into situations with our knowledge,
Yeah.
and we speak before we understand. We don't actually have any wisdom. There's this story in the Bible which I particularly like, and it talks about a prophet who comes and he sits, and it says, "And I sat where they sat for 3 days."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think for me that is wisdom, is when we sit in silence, we shut up, we don't create judgment, we don't speak into situations, we sit and we understand. We sit where they sat, right? We sit where
Mm.
they sit.
Mm.
We experience what they experience, and we see it
Mm.
from their perspective
Mm.
before we speak.
That part, because I knew there was a piece missing about the whole knowing. With the knowingness must come empathy and compassion.
Yeah,
And I think that's where the intelligent fool piece comes in. Because you can know everything, but if you are
yeah,
fully inward focused and you are not empathizing and you're not picking up on the others around you and the others' experiences, then, well, what use are you? What
yeah,
use are you
yeah.
to anyone? Wow. So,
I like that. What use are you? What
what
use are
use?
you?
What have you done for me lately? Again.
I think that should be our theme song.
Definitely.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think, I hope, there's one of my desires is to be able to walk the world in wisdom. And I think that what you're saying, that empathy is a big thing. And, a lot of the times I'm not wise, obviously. And every now and then,
mm,
and I do think with age you become wiser. But I think you can also become more entrenched and more ignorant with age, because it's not a given that just because you're getting older, you're getting wiser, right? You can be entrenched in old patterns,
yes.
and old ways that actually just, you might have more experience, and so you may be able to speak
Yeah.
into things, but also you could just become ignorant,
We're
like really
making,
ignorant and out of touch.
I think we're putting together the building blocks of a wiser and better person, because at the end of the day, all of this also must come with growth, must come with
Yes,
curiosity and growth, because there are things I believe
yes.
now that I did not believe. I mean, there are things going
Oh
on
my
within
goodness.
within our society right now that I had different views on when I
Yeah,
was 20, 30 years old. So
yeah,
if we're not growing and we're not learning, and as you said, there are some very, very wise young people, and there's some new things coming up generated by the younger generations that we must learn from. Otherwise,
yeah.
again, our knowledge becomes useless, or it goes against progress. Um,
Yeah, and I think there's one thing I remember hearing someone say. I can't remember who it was. I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone say, tradition is our ancestors' peer pressure.
mhm,
And I loved that, because it's the idea that people are like, yes, but this is our tradition. Now, there's a difference between culture and tradition, right? And there might be aspects of culture that are traditional
yeah,
and therefore do apply to this. But I think sometimes we get so stuck in what is traditional, and therefore, because
mhm,
it's traditional, it must be correct.
mm,
It must be the truth. And actually, when we unpack it, I love it. Well, that was just peer pressure, our ancestors' peer pressure.
yeah,
That was the loudest voice
because
at that time, and now
yes,
we're stuck to it. We've got to unwed
we
ourselves,
have to. And
set
then
ourselves free.
when interrogated and when asked why are we doing this, the only answer is it's because it's tradition, then the red flags should start going off immediately,
Yeah.
because you know that there's
And
no
I think that
rational explanation.
and I think that's exactly what you said about wisdom, is curiosity, right?
Mm,
Curiosity. I think you see that when people are curious, when you engage with things with just curiosity, like, that's really interesting. Let me understand.
mm,
Let me be curious about the hows and the whys and the what,
yeah,
and question things.
yes,
It creates space. It's like when you're growing a garden, which I cannot do. I am not a gardener, but you have to air. Apparently, you have to like air the soil, right? So you have to, before you put seed down, you have to, you know, air the soil. I was trying to find a technical term, but I don't know what it is. But
aerate it,
basically,
I
you have.
think. I mean, you're talking to another
Okay, maybe
very poor gardener.
gardening
I grow
novice,
plants in
but
pots, that's all I do.
Oh,
Mm.
that's good. That's good. I have, yeah, even that I'm not very good at. I have one orchid that has survived 2 years. I just want to say, and it's beautiful.
Mhm.
But, um, you literally, you use a fork and you undo the 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 soil. You loosen it up. You get air and water in, and
Mhm.
sometimes we're so solid. We're so solid in our thinking, and so convinced that we're right, and so convinced what we believe, and the people we choose to agree with believe, that we're like rock, we're like stone,
Yeah, nothing
and we
can penetrate.
justify that.
Nothing can
Nothing can
penetrate.
penetrate,
Nothing new.
and nothing can
And you
grow.
cannot grow.
Nothing new,
Absolutely.
and you cannot grow. You're
Listen,
just a lump of rock.
Eileen, I'm sure I'm not the only
Yes.
one who's getting your coach vibes coming through today. You're on your kind of coach train. You're coach train
Well, you see, but it's
today.
really interesting. It's really interesting. So this is one of the things with coaching that I think is very different, from friendship, right?
Hmm.
Or because when you're coaching someone, you don't give advice,
Hmm.
right? Because this is the thing. I think with friendship. And when you chat to people, you're like, oh, let me call you up and get your advice. Now, you call me up and you ask for my advice. I'm going to tell you what I think you should do, right? I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you from my perspective, from my outlook onto life,
Yeah.
what I think is best for you. And I think a lot of the time that's how we operate in the world. We think, I will tell you what you
Mm.
need. Right?
Yes.
And realistically, and that's again, it's a judgment, isn't it? It's
Mm.
like, if you did it this way,
Hmm.
like, I was just shut up. You don't know how someone else should live their life or how they should do their things, right? And I mean, obviously, we give each other advice all the time, but
We do.
that's part of the difference with coaching. Coaching is not about advice. Coaching is about unearthing and and mining. So it's the awareness that the person you are speaking with, so my clients, in innately know what they need.
You see, that's the thing. Okay. Listen, I guess I need to know more about this because is that really always the case that your clients, when you're coaching somebody, they always know, or even from a therapist point of view? Um, I'm really into therapy. I watch, you know, in treatment, and I watch all these therapy shows, and I listen to the actual real professional therapists
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of podcasts and stuff because the internal universe interests me a lot. And
Mm.
I just find that sometimes I'm listening to some of the clients and I'm thinking,
You're
this
just like,
person is
just tell them.
this person is clueless. They don't have a clue. But yeah, talk to me about that.
Well, okay, firstly, therapy and coaching are completely different.
Okay.
So let's not, I am not a therapist. I am not qualified to be anyone's therapist. I am not qualified to diagnose anything as a psychiatrist or psychologist or
Okay.
therapist. I am not,
All
right?
right.
I am not a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had situations where I have had a client who actually needs therapy and they don't need me.
Okay.
And very early on when I was coaching, I crossed some lines without really
Oh,
understanding. And then at some point you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is not my where I'm supposed to be.
okay.
So I'm very, very clear with that. If you need therapy, go to a therapist, go to a professional.
Got it.
Um, when you ask me, because so most of the people who come for coaching,
Mm-hmm.
who actually want to be coached, they are ready,
Ah.
right? Because coaching is it's a lot of the time people come because they want change. They actually
Mm.
want change.
Mm-hmm.
They want to do things differently. What they think they come for and what they are actually in need of are often different. So, for instance, people come with a very clear sort of like, this is what I want. I want you to coach me to to earn a higher salary.
Okay.
I want you to coach me to find a partner. Now, those things are end goals to a degree, but in the coaching, we can start to look at, is that what you really want? And that's the unearthing. And a lot of the time, if people come with three very clear goals,
Yeah.
within a few sessions, those goals have shifted because we've gotten in touch a lot of the time with what they really want. So when you ask me, do they really know?
Mm.
Innately,
Mm-hmm.
I think we do know, but I think we have covered up what we know in what we innately know and desire and value and believe. We've covered that up with so many layers of we shoulds.
Okay.
I should, I must. We've eroded our sense of self confidence um, through, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, our families, our backgrounds, our education,
Yeah.
the society, tradition. All of that has a lot of time eroded our sense of self. And I think when we um, when when we are allowed to really self-investigate, and when I say people are ready, it means
Mm.
that they're also ready to self-reflect,
Okay.
because you can't really change without self-reflection, because what are you changing?
I've got a
Now
question.
again, you're putting on another performance. Yes,
I
ask me
need
the
you to
question.
rewind and tell me whether people really come to you and say, "Could you coach me to find a husband and coach me to earn more money?"
Yes,
Oh,
because look, it depends what people's experience is, right? So if you are um like, if you're in your late 20s and you're single, and and you've been on the dating scene, and nothing's happening, and you desire a relationship, then you're like,
okay.
help me,
Okay.
somebody help me. And
That's
it's a
fair.
very valid thing. So
Mm.
what I find is that depending on who you're coaching. So when I was younger and I was coaching younger people, because
Yeah.
I did coach people who are a little bit older than me, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the time I tried to coach people who I had more experience, and sometimes it was just more wisdom, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you kind of, I don't, when I trained to be a coach, I didn't want to coach someone who had lived 20 years longer than me and had a much vaster array. Although over time I've become even more confident with that,
Okay.
because I think, again, it's innately who they are
Mm.
that comes
Mm.
out. But you know of course, when we people come because they feel a lack in
Mm.
their life, or an unfulfilled, what they perceive as a need.
Yeah.
So that shifts from, you know coach me, I want a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
to when I'm coaching women who have the relationship and have the children. A lot of the time it's, coach me because I need to change something in my career,
Yeah.
I need to change something. And then it's looking at, in both cases,
Mm-hmm.
what is the underlying needs, what are the
Yeah.
things that you've let go of, what of yourself has been compromised or abandoned
Mm.
or undervalued, and then it's helping. So you know you've got a family, the thing that you really wanted, and you've got your partner, but actually you still feel very unfulfilled and very, okay, so
Okay.
what's going on there,
Mm.
what's going on there?
Yeah.
And helping people uncover that. um and I do think, yeah, there are people who I think are completely disconnected from themselves, and I've
Mm.
coached people who are completely disconnected from themselves, but given the right
Yes.
questions, people begin to connect. So I think you also have to work at where people are,
Mm. Meet them where
right?
they are.
So when I speak, meet them where they are.
Mm.
So don't assume. A few years ago, I decided I was going to take everything that I had learned with
Yeah.
coaching, and I was going to put together a course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. I put together a 9-week course with everything I had ever learned and
Okay.
understood. And because I was just like, you know what, everybody needs the
Mm-hmm.
tools, right? So I did this. Anyway, I actually, it was great, but the feedback I got was, it was too
Oh.
much. It was just too much, because it's like, how do you take somebody who's just starting to eat and feed them steak, right?
Yeah, I
You've
can
got to
imagine it must be.
you've got
Another
to
analogy might be probably be like, I want to get fitter, and then you go to the gym and your
yeah,
personal trainer's like, okay, we're doing kung fu,
here's
we're
150
doing
kilos.
swimming, triathlon,
Yeah,
javelin, and shot put. Oh,
exactly.
I see. Oh,
Exactly.
amazing.
Exactly. So that was a big thing for me. And I think I mean, at one point I'll revisit and
Mm-hmm.
look at, creating, stepping
Yeah,
stones, because you've got to help people
yeah.
get there, um, in a way that is sustainable as
Mm,
well, and is transformational.
transformational, because I wanted to say, like, full disclosure, at one point, several years back, I was one of your What is it? What is it? Coachees,
Guinea
guinea
pigs.
pigs. That's the
Guinea
one.
pigs. Well, but you were actually, when I was
You were, yeah,
training, I think
yeah.
I was training and I had to get
Mm-hmm.
experience, because I wouldn't coach a friend now. I wouldn't do
Okay.
that. Um, because I know you too
Yeah.
well. But then it was different, and it was a
I
very
love
good
that. I
experience for
wanted to.
me, and hopefully for
Yes,
you.
I scarred for life. In the sense that,
Thanks.
yeah,
That's the
scarred for
testimonial
life.
I'll put on my
in
information.
in the sense in the sense that at the time that you came to me and said I'm looking for subjects, test subjects, I was going through an extremely tumultuous time in my career. I was extremely stressed, and
Mm,
that's something we've got to talk about in a future episode. But I was very, very stressed. I just could not manage my load that I was carrying. My kids were young.
yeah.
I had a proper full-time demanding, job with responsibilities, and I was so stressed. And I have to tell you, the
Mm,
tools that you gave me at that point, and we really just focused on those, and the tools that you gave me, and including visualization tools, by the way, and that was the beginning of my journey into visualization, which I still do. Literally was doing it this
right.
morning. But the tools that you gave me were so effective. I still use them to this day, and it kind of changed the way that I
That's really
approach.
nice to
Yeah,
know.
not just
Well,
blowing
and I
smoke,
think
but
that's the thing. I think that's the thing. There is a transformational aspect. There should
mm,
be. There should be a transformational aspect. But I think for there to be transformation, you have to really mine, and you have to really analyze and self-reflect on what is the lens through which I am currently
mm-hmm,
living life. What are my belief systems? What thoughts have I inherited?
mm,
What ways am I being that actually don't fit
yeah,
who I truly am? You know, so when people are living life through a particular belief system that doesn't actually align with their true values, there's going to be a sense of
yeah,
disalignment. And I think that is a lot of the time what happens. What I experience with clients is actually it's trying to figure out, how do I align who I innately
mm-hmm,
am with what I am doing, how I am how I am living, and then how to get, so, who am I really? What are my values?
yeah,
What actually motivates me? What are my
mm,
needs? And then how do I really want to live?
okay.
And are those things, is that really happening with the belief systems that I have, that I am living out of
And by
now?
belief systems, can I just ask you to clarify? Because I think I'm trying to relate what you're saying to me, and I think that one of the belief systems that I've had to kind of struggle against is the
Mm,
African African the expectations we put on ourselves as African women. My
yeah.
mother um, trained, so she trained in her profession. She was a teacher, and then later on, she worked in companies. And but her whole thing throughout that whole time was, you must be. I'm training you up to be a wife, a mother, and a professional. That was one of
Yeah.
my. We talk
Yeah.
about it all the
So,
time.
so then you look at that and you're saying, all right, so that's the function of a belief
Mm,
system. But with that, what does that say about your value?
okay.
Do you, right, how do you become valuable?
Mm,
What makes you
mm-hmm,
valuable? You are valuable when you are able to fulfill this
mm.
criteria. And so if you are not fulfilling that criteria, you are
I'm
not
failing.
valuable.
I'm failing.
You're
Mm,
failing. So yeah, so if you're saying you failed because you haven't fulfilled that
mm-hmm,
criteria, but actually not only have you failed, it means that you're not good
yeah.
enough, you're not valuable, right? So then, if say you are single,
Mm-hmm,
right, and you have this criteria of what it is to be valuable, and your desire is to be in a loving
yeah.
relationship, but ultimately, because you're not fulfilling this criteria, you feel you're not
Mm,
valuable, therefore you're not lovable,
right.
right? So you want one thing, but your internal dialogue is denying you of it because of something you believe. I'll give you an easier
Okay.
example. Someone comes and says, I want to make more
Yeah.
money at work. I want a higher
Mm-hmm.
salary. But their belief system is the love of money is the root of evil,
Oof. Yeah.
right? And if forget maybe, and the thing is, even that is the love of money is different. But people don't even say the love of money. They
Money.
say money is the root of all
Money
evil,
is.
right? So
Mm.
now that is what you personally, deeply, if we were to unpack it, that's actually what you
Yeah.
believe, that money is the root of all evil. Now, do I want to be evil? No.
And as much as
So
your conscious mind is telling yourself, yes, I want a higher salary because, the work I do demands it.
yeah, got
If
bills to pay.
something is sitting there, a little voice in the back of your head, deep in your subconscious, is reminding you that, no, that's not
Yeah.
good.
And I think also it's looking at with integrity. When I say integrity, I don't mean, personal integrity, which is one thing, but I mean integrity with all things being integrated. So in
Okay.
alignment, right, with your values, your
Yeah.
beliefs, and the way
Mm.
you live. With that sort of integration, I think what happens as well is it's not just your mind. So, as a man thinks, so is
Yes.
he. But that is one thing, but it's also as a man thinks in his
Yeah.
heart, right? So it's not just your head that has to be in alignment, it has to be your heart, i.e., your
Mm.
emotional life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes we get so stuck in our heads and what should, what could, but we're not actually aligning. There's no um, coherence with our hearts. So our head is over here somewhere saying, this is how I should be. Our heart is over here
Yeah.
somewhere else. And so there's no alignment with
Mm.
that. And then we've got the voices, the external voices. And so basically we're just
Yeah.
chaotic. There's just so much chaos. Or a double-minded man, will never succeed. You've got
Mm.
your feet in both
Yeah.
worlds, right? You're double-minded, and that doesn't mean that you're hypocritical, or you're just not
Yeah.
aligned. And so it's helping saying, all right, how do I align myself? But first I need to know who I
Yeah.
really am, right? I need to know what I actually think. I need to know what I actually believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with that, once I know what I think and I believe, I need to see if I'm living according to that. Once I know what I really value and what I really need, am I actually living in
And then
accordance with that?
there must be a process as well of saying, okay, here are my values, and now I am rationalizing that these are values that no longer serve me, that no longer work for me. But I need to go through a process of purging the values from my belief system. Is that
Okay, so this is I think those are two different things. I think when we begin to investigate what our true
yeah.
values are versus the lens in which we're operating from,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and I think that's the unearthing. So, if, for instance, I know I want to make money, I want to have a good job. I need to have a good job. It's something I need, and I need to make money, and I need to pay my bills. I need to ensure, and that's something that I do
Yeah.
value, right? Actually, I value having that. It's important to me. Um, but I also value um, integrity. I value honesty, and I value
Mm-hmm.
transparency, right? These are all so I value the security of a good, an income. Security is normally the thing, or freedom. That's normally what the
Mm-hmm.
values are: security, freedom, and we associate that with
Yes.
finance. But then I also value integrity and transparency and vulnerability. And then I get a job working in a sales company that I can earn a lot of commission over getting people to hand over their
Mm.
pensions unknowingly,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's going to happen then is I am out of alignment. My values are out of alignment because I value transparency, but I'm lying to get the other value fulfilled, right? And so you're never going to feel
Yeah.
well within yourself. You are never going to have peace. So it's not so much getting rid of those values, because those values are who you are. So you can value security and integrity and line them up into a work position or a relationship or whatever it is
Okay.
that actually suits
Okay.
those.
So then maybe I'm just categorizing things wrongly, because for me, I've had to go through a process, and I believe in, like, I'm a keen practitioner of continuous personal development. And so
Mm, mm,
I have had to mm, reassess and reprioritize those values that I was talking about. The whole I can
yeah,
be and can't have it all. The whole myth that I can be excellent at being domestic, a mother, a career person, and then
yeah,
and all of those things. So
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah,
where I'm at right now is there are things I can be good at, but it's not possible. I'm going to work my fingers to the bone if I try and do all of those things.
yeah,
So those, I guess, are not
yeah.
values. Those are maybe beliefs about what I believe in.
I think they're beliefs. I think they're
Yeah.
beliefs, and I think we have to, because I think our core being is it. So when you say, do people innately know? I think if you, people live a lot of the time in the um, superficial aspect of their personality and their character,
Mm-hmm.
right? We live to a level superficially in the way we engage with the world, and I think if we are to really self-reflect and really get in touch with who we are, we will find. So when I wrote the program, one of the things that I felt was really key was ungrowing up. I called it ungrowing up. Um, and people had a really negative response to it, which was interesting. The reason I called it ungrowing up was because I feel like when children come into this world, they come in the perfect form of who they are. They are perfect, and then we mess them up. They we grow them up in a way that they then, when they come to a coach like me, they've got to shed all of that stuff, right? And I think that's what I saw. I saw so many people were reconnecting with their deep longings from
Mm.
that they've always had, that they've always known, and they've pushed it away. They've
Mm.
grown up. They've been told to put away childish
Mm-hmm.
things. The problem is they're not childish,
Mm.
right? There's a difference between being childish and being
Yeah.
childlike. And I think being childlike is entering the world with an absolute sense of belonging and
Mm-hmm.
purpose and
Okay.
freedom. It's being who you truly are. And then you're told, no, 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 don't talk like that. No, 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 don't walk like that. No,
Mm.
no, no, don't behave like. No, 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 you have to be this, you have to be that, you have to be this, you have
Yeah.
to be that. And then you start your sense of self starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and you've aligned yourself with somebody else's idea of how you should
Mm-hmm.
be, somebody else's idea of what it looks like to be successful, somebody else's idea of what it is to be a good mother, a good
Mm.
wife, a good career woman, a good, and none of that is who is coming out of
Yeah.
you. Is coming out from you. Does it mean we don't learn from all that? No, it doesn't. That's another story. But none of it is coming out of you. So you're adapting yourself to all these
Mm-hmm.
other things rather than adapting them to
Right.
you. And so you're out of
Okay.
alignment. And so when I said, ungrowing up, that's what I meant. It's like shedding all of the restrictions that the grown up, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, you is
Okay.
supposed to have, and living in a sense of
Right.
freedom. And I think that's ultimately it. I think when we are truly released to be
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, and most of the time it's us releasing
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, when we truly do that, it's very hard not to walk in love, compassion, empathy.
Yeah.
It's very hard not
I,
to, because you're not trying to prove a point. You're not jealous of anyone. You're not
yeah.
you're not
And
um you're not insecure. You
mm,
you know,
and I think
so you can have
I
all
can
these
hear
other
our
things.
mascot Sherlock in the background, but isn't that
Yeah,
isn't that a wonderful thing that we've come almost full circle to what we said about growing older, and the fact that I think
yeah,
growing older gives you a free should it should give you a sense of freedom. It should give you a sense of freedom and release and free you from some of those
yeah,
social binds that keep us from behaving one way or another, and it gives us that you know, carefree attitude and the ability to go and discover new things. Um, but
yeah.
Eileen, one of the things that I'm sure you also dealt with is this thing that keeps cropping up in our conversations, which is imposter syndrome. Um,
Oh gosh,
yeah, I know I had it.
listen, so yeah, so now here's the thing, and you challenged me a lot because you said physician
Yeah.
heal thyself, because I'm really, really good at recognizing other people's brilliance. Like, I fall in love with people. I just think people are amazing. I mean, I don't always like them, like I don't like people.
You and I were digressing on that. I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah, but generally, you know what I mean? Like, I can stand in awe of somebody I never want to have tea with. They're never going to be my friend, but I have a deep appreciation of other people's brilliance, and I don't necessarily have that same appreciation for myself. And that is true. So in that imposter syndrome, and I think part of my thing is, one of my values is integrity.
Okay.
So anywhere where I have felt I haven't fulfilled that, if you imagine a straight line, there's a chip, it's sort of, it's chipped. And as I've gotten older and I'm practicing self-compassion, I would say I'm healing that side of myself, and maybe functioning better with that. But because of that, I have definitely struggled greatly with
And
imposter
Aileen, let me
syndrome.
tell you, I've
Greatly.
only ever.
Can I just say, I apologize for Sherlock's heavy breathing. He hasn't walked today, so he's panting at me like, come on, mother.
Listen,
Sorry, carry on. You've only
I've
ever.
known you for, I think we've said that we've known each other for over 30 years now. And this is the first time you and I actually like working together. So we've been at this for over a year, working around the podcast. And it's the first time I've ever sort of um, had exposure to or seen you expose that sense that you're describing. Because from afar,
Yeah, because I'm really good
you
at
are so
masking.
good at you had me fooled. You definitely had me fooled.
Mm,
And for a while I was like,
mm,
why are we still kind of planning? Because unlike you, I will, yes, I've had imposter syndrome, but once I'm convinced of, it takes me a long time to get convinced of to do something. And then once I'm all in, once I'm in, I am 100% all in, and I just want to do it.
100%.
Let's just do it. So
Yeah,
there was that whole friction between me saying, let's just do it, and your imposter syndrome manifesting as a let's get it perfect. And I'm like,
yeah,
it'll never be perfect. Let's just go ahead
yeah,
and do it. Until finally
yeah,
it came to me, the realization that, oh my gosh,
yeah.
there's something a bit more than just let's get things right here.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're really right, and I think also, because for me, working with other people and mining with them, I can do at the drop of the hat. I don't have to think about that, right? I don't have to think about, well, maybe I do, but it's much easier for me than putting myself
Hmm.
out there. And so what you yeah, and what you learn about yourself. And I think that's the thing, where they say, feel the fear and do it
Yeah.
anyway. There's a real part of that in overcoming any sort of imposter syndrome. It's like, it's
Mm.
okay to feel the
Yeah.
fear. It's okay to, I mean, I tell my daughter that all the time. It's okay that you're
Mm-hmm.
afraid. It doesn't mean you
Mm.
shouldn't do it. Now, so I'm really good at helping other
Yeah.
people, but not necessarily, I think I'm getting better, but I'm not necessarily very good at just
Mm.
doing it myself,
Mm.
you know. And I mean, we could spend a whole session just, and I could tell you why, but I don't think the why matters, which I think is part of the thing which is much more therapy related.
Yeah.
Why? I know why.
Mm.
I do know
Okay.
why, but I do think as well that at some point you make a
Yes.
choice to change your thinking, because it's the power of a lot of the way you think and
Yeah.
feel,
No.
and you can just stay in some sort of
Yeah.
stagnant place with that.
I did my did a little bit of research about imposter syndrome, and one of the things when you talk about the why, for the benefit of our listeners, they talk about how um, of course it's defined as feeling of fear and self-doubt, feeling like a fraud even in the face of success. And
Mm.
actually, paradoxically, it is not the ones who are the least competent who feel imposter syndrome. It's actually overachievers and highly competent people
But
who
this is
also
this is
suffer
the
from
thing. This is
imposter syndrome.
always the thing. It's no, but I think that's a big part of imposter syndrome. I think if you don't know that you don't
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't have fear,
Mm.
right? So that's why you find people who really are rather rubbish at
Yeah.
doing things, doing lots of things,
The
right?
blissfully ignorant.
And you're like, how come? Yeah, yeah, the blissfully ignorant, and it's like, how come? Because they're like, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
What I can do, and people who know that they can't, or that they don't know something in entirety, or that it's like that's when you're like, oh, I actually know.
How this can be done.
So I actually know that I can't do the whole thing. I actually know that I'm
Yeah.
not, and so I think that's a really big
Yeah.
thing of the blissfully
Did you
blissfully
know, Eileen,
ignorant.
that Black women disproportionately suffer from imposter syndrome? And
I believe it.
and it's because of the baggage we carried, previous discrimination at work, being excluded through life,
Mm-hmm.
having negative conditioning, i.e., as women, it's like not just a double or triple whammy. It's women being African, maybe being
Mm-hmm.
immigrants, just like you and me, being Black, having a culture that is other, even the accents. And it leads to a lot of things
Yeah.
like code switching and all. Not that code switching is a negative thing, but
Yeah.
anyway, I was just curious to see that it's a particularly Black woman problem, this imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can be with anybody, but
Mm,
that it is exaggerated with Black women. I completely understand that and
mm,
believe that. And I'm sure if we looked at it as well, it's probably minority
yeah.
groups,
Mm,
ethnic minorities, be it from India living in the
mhm,
UK, be it from Asia, like actually probably it would be very interesting. There must be gradients, and it always goes back to the Black woman is on the pecking scale is generally
yeah.
the lowest, even though probably that could very often be the highest
Mm,
performer.
mm,
And so then it's also then the things we believe about ourselves. Just a small story, and this isn't my only why, but this is one of the stories from my life. I remember I must have been about 11 years old or 12 years old, and I was in a classroom at a school, and the teacher asked me to help her, and she was a white lady, and I don't know that it was
mhm,
racist. I don't know, um, but she asked me to help her get some books from the cupboard for the kids for the rest of the class. And I went in with her, and I was always a chatter. I was
mhm.
always a chatter. And we went into the cupboard. This woman, now when I look back, she must have been in her 20s, which is shocking to me. She shut the door behind me. She turned around. She put her finger in my face and said, "You will amount to nothing in your life. You will never, nothing ever good is going to happen." And I and
Oh,
and
wow.
so you're just thinking, all right, at that point, and I remember just being really shaken, but then I was a bit of a like whatever kind of
Hmm.
kid. But at the core of me, so now when you've had those messages repeated that blatantly or subtly, which a lot of microaggressions are,
Hmm.
you begin to
Mhm.
internalize it. So no matter how well you perform, you don't think, right?
That
So
is that is
and there's a lot.
goodness. Okay, that's just shocking. What had you done? Just this was her. She thought she'd take this opportunity to give
I
you.
was I was a I
Oh
don't
my.
know. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But also, what kid? No kid has ever done anything to deserve that,
Mm,
right? And then it goes back to what is the power of what we say to our
mm.
children or to other people's children. And also, why are you a teacher?
You
Just
clearly do not
don't be a
like
teacher.
children. I mean, if you can't
You
like
clearly
baby
don't like
Eileen, if you
kids.
cannot like, I knew child Eileen. You
You
were
did, right? I
adorable.
wasn't that bad. But it
Oh
is. So all
wow.
these messages that we pick
Mhm.
up, girl, I have so many of those stories. One day I'll
Mm.
tell you them. Maybe I'll write two books. I'll write a comparison book. What other people tell you to believe and what you
I
be. I
know.
don't know. But anyway, but I
Wow.
have a lot of those stories, and but it is that thing of how then do you navigate the world when those messages have
Mhm.
been
You soundtrack. They've been
your
part of,
your
yeah.
map of life. They've been your
And
soundtrack. And they are the perimeters
mm,
and the boundaries
mhm,
of your life. And the thing is, if I'm honest, I know so
mhm,
many Black
mhm,
women. And not only Black, as a coach, I work with so many women who have received similar
mhm,
messages, maybe not in the same form, but have received these messages throughout their life and been told these
Mm-hmm.
devastating things about who they are from parents,
Yeah.
from teachers, from society. They've just been told and they've
Yeah.
experienced stuff, and then that and that and I'm amazed at how
Mm.
resilient and powerful and
Yes.
wonderful women
Yeah.
are.
And I think that, I mean, I've got an example as well. It's not as shocking as yours, but I just recently read a story about how a conservative right body is suing for racial discrimination, a venture capital fund in America that's been set up specifically to provide funding to minority women in the US. And so they were talking to the founder, and she says, and what she describes is the same, that thing that I see when I'm coaching and mentoring African women in the startup space, which is that they are the most founded, they found the most businesses, and yet they are the least funded. Now, the statistic that's there from
Yeah.
the US is that of all of the venture capital funding that goes out there, minority women take only 0.36% of all funding that goes out there. And yet we know that Black women found
Wow.
businesses at a phenomenal rate. Now, that's been my experience as well.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I think I almost could have let it be the thing that made me feel that I am not good enough, my business is not good enough, until I started seeing the stats. So
Right.
there's a very, very clear argument in favor of bringing rational, bringing rational thoughts into your mind, but then also looking for the validation. I think Rehema mentioned the whole what is the evidence? So
What's
looking
the evidence?
outside
Yeah, that's
for
the
the
evidence. Yeah.
validation of or evidence of what our internal thoughts are, because I'm telling you, and
Mm.
I have to constantly say this to women as well, to say it's hard out there. It is difficult. The harsh reality is that there is not enough funding for women who look like us, but that we just need to plug
Mm.
on. And I remember being part of a program where there was a young French dude who had been successful, so who had successfully launched and sold a couple of businesses, and he was talking to us, and he said, "It's grit, wit, and something else that matches with grit and wit. Yeah, that's all you need, blah, blah, blah." And I found myself getting angry because another version of
Angry.
me would have
Yeah.
been saying, I don't have enough grit. I don't have enough wit. I'm not working hard enough.
Yeah. Can I say, I did a talk many years ago to a group of women, and I look back at that talk and I'm angry with myself. I think, how could, because I had bought into, what, you decide, you just
Yeah,
face up to, all of those things, and the messages, and it's
it is
such
BS. And I told
BS.
the guy,
It's like
I told him what,
there.
yes, I did
Oh,
tell him
you
on that
told
call.
him.
I
Well
said,
done. Yeah.
you're describing a different world, a different reality. First of all, you're in Europe where
Yeah.
there's a lot of money. Secondly, you're a young white man and you've been to the right schools. You move in the right circles. That's not the case. Like, understand your audience, understand the people that
Yeah.
you're talking to. That's the day that
Yeah.
I thought, okay, at least I don't have. I think I've found a little. I think I found a beacon when it comes to my abilities as a startup founder, as a business owner, and I'm shedding a little bit of that imposter syndrome that comes from that.
Right. But what you've just described is the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? I mean, with all his knowledge, he had no
Mm-hmm.
wisdom to actually read the
Mm-hmm.
room and understand other people's experience. And I think that it really is. I think we have to acknowledge the challenges that face us in all things,
Yeah.
as individuals, and as women of color and communities and our children, and actually really have that compassion and that empathy towards
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, to say, what, and it goes back to what we've talked about and what we've seen with this whole season, is these
Mm.
incredible women,
Yeah. They make me
these
smile.
incredible women, and
Yeah.
and it's so, they
Oh yeah.
fill me with so much joy. It's
Mm.
just delight, and I just think, if we could, for a moment, and I guess the
Mm-hmm.
challenge is to everybody who's listening, if we could celebrate ourselves as much as we're celebrating others, and see ourselves, because I mean, I know none of those women sit at home and say, I'm
Mm.
amazing, right?
Mm.
I know they don't. They not in that sort of. They all had to search themselves and find their value and choose to express themselves in this world, and we celebrate them. Can we celebrate ourselves? Can we champion ourselves with that same intention, with that same love? Can we say of ourselves, look at her go, look at me go in this world? And that it would be so wonderful if we were able to really own ourselves, celebrate the ungrown up version of ourselves, that pure essence of who we are, and know that we belong in this world, and we're bringing wonder to this world, and there are obstacles along the way, but we are not them. It's been such a pleasure doing
Yeah,
season one.
it's been a pleasure, and it's been an honor. It's been an honor to have women come and bare their
Yeah,
souls to us and spend their time with us, and it's been an honor for
yeah,
us to that you have spent the time with us to listen, and we're really, really hoping that
yeah.
you
Thank you.
can tune in and follow us for all of the other series that we have planned, and we hope that you've had as much fun listening and spending time with us as we've had creating this podcast, this amazing podcast. Look at what we did, Eileen. Aren't we great?
Look at what we did. We are. Thank you for shining your beautiful light
Thank
in the
you.
world. And until next time, we are soulfully yours.
Special thanks to Ayozi Apollodyne for our artwork and Crack the Window for our theme music. This episode was edited by Marcus Root. Our website is soulfullypodcast.com. Check it out for show notes and links. Please subscribe to our podcast on most podcast platforms and watch us on YouTube. Thank you for listening, and until next time, we're soulfully yours.